Okay, welcome everyone to another new week. We continue on our book reading, Advanced Selling Strategy by Brian Tracy. We're in chapter 4 of our book, which says the heart of the sale. And it defines the heart of the sale as a simple technique or a term that is used to persuade, or it is a process of persuading your buyers or your customers to purchase or patronize your product and services. Okay, that is what's the heart of the selling actually. And so, how do you persuade your customers? How do you persuade your clients to buy a particular product or to patronize a particular services? You have to convince them. You have to persuade them. You have to let them know your product is the best and it's what will actually solve their problems. So today we start on page 121, which says major obstacles to buying. Major obstacles to buying. So two of the greatest enemies of mankind are and always have been fear and ignorance. Fear feeds on itself. It holds us back. It causes us to question our own potentials and possibility. It leads us to interpret events and circumstances negatively rather than positively. It eats away at us silently, deep inside, and keeps our foot on the brakes of our own hopes and aspirations. Ignorance is often the breeding ground of fear. When you don't understand something or you don't know how to do something, you tend to feel uneasy and even fearful about it. Much failure and frustration is based sorry, I come again. Much failure and frustration is based on ignorance and uncertainty. On the other hand, the better you become at something, the less you fear it. You can eventually reach the point where you have such complete confidence in yourself that you have no fear at all. Knowledge and skills override fear and ignorance and make all things possible for you. If the biggest obstacle to selling is the fear of rejection experienced by the salesperson, then the biggest obstacles to buying is the fear of failure experienced by the customer. The fear of failure is probably the greatest single obstacle to success of all kinds in our society today. The fear of failure does not mean to hold people back and paralyze their decision making ability than any other factor. The reason that qualified customers do not buy is because they are afraid of making a mistake. They are afraid of being stuck with the wrong item. They are afraid of paying too much or finding it at a lower price elsewhere. They are afraid of being criticized for making a poor purchase decision. They are afraid that if the product or services doesn't work, you or your company will not service it and they will be left hanging. They are afraid that your product or services will not do the things that you claim it will do and will not yield them the benefit that you tell them they will enjoy. In short, when a customer thinks about buying your product, he or she is often overwhelmed with a wave of fear that triggers the response of, let me think over it. My son, David, 6 years old, came home from the supermarket with my wife, Barbara, the other day. He gets a small allowance each week and he had insisted on spending $1 of his allowance on a cheap plastic gun from the toy department. Barbara tries to talk him out of it by telling him that the gun was cheap and flimsy and would fall apart as soon as he started playing with it. But David was adamant. He wanted the gun and he kept battering, bothering her until she finally allowed him to buy it with his own money. When they got home, David immediately pulled the gun out of the package and began playing with it. After just a few minutes, the trigger broke and the handle cracked. The mechanism came apart inside the transparent plastic gun so that you could see the pieces rattling around. It was finished. With an angry look on his face, David said, "Look at this gun. It's just a piece of junk." With that, he marched over to the trash compactor and threw it in. He said, "I will never buy another pieces of junk like that again." He then stormed out of the room. David's education as a consumer in our commercial society has begun. He has had one of what will eventually turn into a hundred, if not thousands, of experience as a result of his buying decisions. Many of his buying decisions will be mistakes and leave him wishing he had never bought the item in the first place. And each time he has a negative buying experience, he flies away the combination he flies away the combined emotions of anger and fear that go with it. The anger for having been taken for a ride and the fear of having it happen to him again. By the time he reaches adulthood, David will be thoroughly programmed to be a customer in today's complex society. Every day as a salesperson, every day you as a salesperson are dealing with a similar David when you approach a customer because of a lifetime of experiences. The prospect instinct's reaction to you as a salesperson is to see you as someone who attempts to sell them something that costs too much and that doesn't work as promised. He or she will respond with skepticism, suspicion, hostility, resistance, and tension. To escape from a potential negative experience, they will say things like this: "We are not in the market right now. I can't afford it. It costs too much. I am not interested. I can get it cheaper from the competitors. It's not in our budget. We are quite happy with our existing product or supply. We are going through a resentment of our own needs and we are not in a position to consider it at this time. Business is bad. Our cash flow is too low to consider at this time. I have to talk it over with someone else who isn't here at the moment. Why don't you leave some materials and I will get back to you later." Okay, so this is where we stop for our reading this morning. It says the major obstacles to buying, and the book has told us that the major obstacle to buying is actually fear and ignorance. Once you have knowledge of what you're buying, or once you have a full understanding or full information about what you're about to purchase, it is easier to go ahead and purchase it. So as salespeople, or as a salesperson, our biggest fear or the biggest obstacle there is one, the fear of rejection and the fear of failure. You're scared of your client or your customer saying no, or giving you excuses of not buying anything or purchasing anything from you. They might give you excuses of why they don't want to buy, like maybe it's not in their budget, or they are not interested, or there's no extra money for it, or they have to talk about it, or they have to think about it. And these excuses that are brought about based on the experiences they've had in life over time with the products and services that they have patronized. Maybe he gave an example of his son David, who had spent his allowance for every week on a toy gun, which eventually gets spoiled. So as a child, he has already started building fear of purchasing items. So as a salesperson and as a customer or as a prospect, the major obstacle to buying, or the major obstacle to selling, for a salesperson, the major obstacle to selling is the fear of rejection and the fear of failure. And for a client, the major obstacles to buying is because they've had a bad experience, a bad purchasing experience in terms of purchasing products and services. Why? Because they didn't have knowledge to they didn't have enough knowledge and information to go about that buying. They couldn't make some certain or clear decision. So much of the failure as a salesperson, much of failure and frustration has been based on ignorance and also uncertainty, not trying to um not trying to have more skills as a salesperson to push your sales. So that is where we'll stop for our reading today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina.
Thank you very much.